Hey everyone, and welcome to Manufacturing Live. We have a really cool guest today that's doing some amazing things in manufacturing and really talking about some of those tough subjects. So I want to introduce everyone to Meaghan Ziemba. Meaghan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what makes you so awesome at what you're doing today?
Yeah, first off, I want to say thank you for inviting me today. I really appreciate, all the kind words and definitely this opportunity to share what I'm doing. But and like you mentioned, my name is Meaghan Ziemba, and I do a lot of different things. I am a brand storyteller, agile marketer. I am a marketing coordinator for a company called PhotoFab, which is located in Chicago, Illinois. And I do a bunch of freelance work as well too. I help manufacturers get their brand story out to their targeted customers. And right now, one of my biggest things that I'm doing is I host a live video cast series called Mavens of Manufacturing, which is live every Friday at 11:30 Central Time in the morning. And I get the opportunity to talk to some of the most amazing women in manufacturing and hear, how they're changing the world with some of the stuff that they're doing, and really just trying to bring awareness to the sector and make it fun and exciting for younger generations so that they start coming in and help filling up, the positions that are going to be available, within the next 5 to 10 years. So that's the short answer for that.
That's a really good answer, by the way. When we talk the last couple of episodes, we talked about skills gap. One of the things we haven't talked about though is the change and the evolution of people that are coming into the workforce, right? And you mentioned it. You have a lot of discussions with women, all the way from the execs down to the people on the shop floor, talking about manufacturing and how that's changing. So can you give a little bit of insight on things that you've started to notice maybe in the last 5-10 years on how some of that's evolving? I've seen some of it, but I would like your thoughts on it as well, if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I first entered the sector, I entered as an editor for a trade publication. And when I went to my very first trade show to walk the floor and try to find new stories to write about and include in the trade publication that I was an editor for, my then boss told me, he's like, okay, just a fair warning, you're going to get a bunch of looks, probably some comments, just keep your professionalism. And I was kind of confused as to what he was talking about. But understood that there was very little women involved in the sector, and some of those women, when I went to every single booth, I may have came across 5 total that worked at each company, and sometimes they weren't at the C level, sometimes they were, but since then I'm coming to find that there's a lot more women who are entering the sector, and they're actually, getting into those top positions, whether it's an operations manager or a CEO or a CTO. Some have even started as a receptionist, at the front desk and worked their way up now to the owner of the company. So it's really exciting to see that change happening even more, because I feel like women have so many skill sets to offer to the sector, including problem solving and multitasking, and just bringing a diverse set of ideas to the table when it comes to solving some of these issues that we're, encountering today. We see the trends, with automation and industrial Internet of Things. We also are seeing robotics coming into the, like, there's a lot of opportunity that women can, fill those missing opportunities that are going to be available over the next 5 to 10 years. I've also seen, more moms entering in the sector, which is great, because initially, when I first entered, a lot of moms were hesitant because they didn't feel like there was an opportunity for them to balance that life, work balance, especially with kids. Kids are so unpredictable, especially if you're a new mom. It's really hard, to balance your work life. It's great to see that manufacturers are also, coming up with really creative ways to attract more moms to the sector. I spoke to a woman in Illinois, and she's actually an owner of the company, and they're actually bringing in a daycare to their facility to help moms be able to be there while they're working, but also be a mom. on the shop floor. So it's really, really cool to see the different ideas that are coming up, to provide that flexibility for parents.
Yeah, to me, it's an amazing transition. And to be honest, like I've never understood why one person is supposed to be this and the other person is supposed to be this. And then, it's like, oh, well, if you work over here, you only get these perks. And if you work over here, you get these perks. Like it's never made sense to me why there's a divide. I've in my career, there's been a long time of working with different groups of people, right? And like I worked with some amazing engineers that were women at really, really large companies. I've worked down in the shop with women that welded. I worked with women machinists, and I never understood why there's a difference between any of them, because everybody shows up and puts in the hours and wants to put food on their table. It doesn't matter what the gender is. So it's always amazing to me how we're at this day and age. And now it's the thought of like, oh, we should have daycare here at a school, at our work. Well, there should have been daycare there even when it was guys working there too, because the guys should be part of taking care of that.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's a great point though too, because a lot of manufacturers still don't have policies in place for paternity leave. It's all maternity leave. So it's like, just because you're a dad doesn't mean you don't deserve that time to take off. So it's really exciting to see more manufacturers are actually being friendly to both the mom and the dad. So having the ability to take a couple of weeks off when you're the father to enjoy time with your newborn, I think it's really helpful, especially with the marriage, because it's nice to have, that second party involved. And sometimes if you don't have the benefit to do that, one or the other has to sacrifice, work or personal time to take care of the kids at home. So it's really nice to see that even paternity leave is being incorporated into some of these benefit packages, as well as, I've worked with some companies where moms were breastfeeding and they didn't have a place to go to either pump, or breastfeed their kids. So it's really nice to see that some of these companies are even, creating an infrastructure to allow that privacy for the moms and giving them an opportunity to still keep up with that schedule. Because I've had 3 kids and I've tried that and it did not go well at all. All 3 of my kids were bottle fed because I just could not figure out that whole schedule. So I have mad respect for parents, especially moms who can, continue their work schedule, breastfeed, and be an awesome mom as well as an awesome worker. So it's good to see that all of those things are starting to be incorporated into the sector now, because I think it's going to benefit not just the employees, but the employers as well.
Yeah, I think there's a huge misunderstanding that like a happy employee, regardless of who they are, is more productive, right?
Absolutely.
And it blows my mind that that we assume that, oh yeah, well, as long as we give them another nickel a year, they'll just be happy and do whatever. Versus sometimes it's just like, if I just feel like I can have a full life, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. I've met a lot of employees that have taken significant pay cuts because they were not happy with the places that they were working at. So that whole idea of, oh, if I just pay them more, they're going to stick around. That's not the reality of the situation, especially now during these times when we're trying to attract younger generations, including the millennials. They want to be of value and they want to provide value. So if they're not happy within the workspace that they're involved in, they are not afraid to leave that place and go find somewhere else, especially if it involves a pay cut. It's interesting to see.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because I was part of a discussion within the last couple of weeks about a position and an opening at a company, and it was like, oh, well, we just need to hire this person just because they're new and young. And I'm like, well, you sort of have to understand what's in it for them. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, when I started my career, it was very different on what we looked for in the world versus what students today come in. So I'd like to chat a little bit about that as it comes to, the skills gap and what new students are looking at today in what they expect in the workforce, because manufacturing is very high tech. It's one of the most high tech industries out there. However, you still have to appeal to the the kids coming in, right? Like how you and I were hired in and brought into manufacturing is very different than today. So can you give your insight on that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's been a couple articles to kind of target what each generation finds value in. And with my daughter, she's actually graduating this year, and they're very involved in technology. Like I don't ever see her without her phone unless she's grounded for some reason. So they already know how to produce videos. They know how to communicate via text. They know, what the new apps are. They're not afraid to do their research. Like my daughter, I was very surprised at how much research she does in regards to the products that she buys. So they want the best products, and they're not afraid to go out there and do the research to figure out, okay, this is what's good. And a lot of her friends are actually into products that don't have a lot of additives in it either. They want good products that aren't going to do more damage to them in the long run. And when I was a kid, I didn't care about any of that stuff. So it's really an eye opener for me in regards to how they're searching for things and what thought processes they have behind purchasing the products that they're purchasing, because they're teenagers. They really have a connection too with, being respectful to everyone as well. I know, like with my daughter, bullying was kind of a hot topic when she was younger, but now it seems like it's not as accepted, and her friends really pull together to like stop that when it happens. So they're all about, providing value to each other as well too, and being a support group, which is really interesting because, back in my day, it was like, you can handle this, be quiet, just get thicker skin sort of thing, where now it's more supportive and if this happens, talk to someone, let's squash it right away, and let's start respecting each other. So I feel like for manufacturers, when they have all of these opportunities available, they really need to focus on, okay, how does this career pathway provide value to the rest of the world and to our, local communities? Because if it's not providing any value, I don't think younger generations are really going to be attracted to that opportunity. We also need to stop talking about, okay, how does filling this position benefit us as a company? Because that's not what younger generations are looking for. They want to know that they're changing the world. They want to know that they're providing value. They don't want to work for a company that doesn't care about their employees or doesn't care about the customers that they're providing to. Money, everybody, money is important, but it shouldn't be the priority. It should be a well-rounded position where they know they're providing value. They need flexibility, and they want a chance to grow too and problem solve. And if they don't, they get bored, and then they're going to move on to something else. And this is just something that I'm personally seeing with my daughter and her friends. They get very, very bored very quickly. So if it's not exciting and they don't see the value in it, then they're going to look for something else to do, and that's what they're going to follow. So I feel like that's a good thing, because there's a lot of things going on in the world that can be challenging. And if you have the right motivation and the right determination, I feel like that's the best time to get the best innovation to solve those problems. So that's some of the things that I'm seeing right now. I don't know what you've seen, if you've seen anything different, but I feel like to really get younger generations, we have to do a better job showing what an actual career pathway looks like in manufacturing instead of just talking about it. We need to show them how it's, how a thin metal part is going into something bigger, and that something bigger is changing the world. For instance, we just landed the Mars rover on Mars, and they're flying a helicopter out there. That's amazing. We use 3D printing to create prosthetics of people that can walk, and it's not as expensive as initial prosthetics were made. I talked to a woman who made small components in the thermal cameras that actually caught the Boston bomber. That's exciting news. So it's little things like that. I think we really need to show, hey, this is what it's used for, and this is how it's making a difference. Otherwise, it's going to go right over their head, and they're going to go into, teaching or childcare or something, which those are great too, but we really need more bodies to come fill the opportunities that are going to be available in the sector. So I'm not dogging, those other opportunities. I'm just a really big fan of manufacturing, and I'm trying to bring as many people in as possible.
Yeah, well, and there was an article I saw from one of our customers, shared Metal Quest, and they were talking about, manufacturing is like one of the top 7 highest paid jobs, right? That don't require a degree. And it's not like $10 an hour jobs, like, you're talking good high tech jobs. But I agree with you 100%. If today's generation doesn't understand why I'm doing something, then there's no value in it for them, right? And when you look at, like, when I started manufacturing, it was like, okay, go stand at that machine and punch that part for 6 hours. And it was like, why? Well, because I'm paying you to stand at that machine and punch that part for 6 hours. That's why. Where today, if you look at like high schools, like Cherry Creek out here, they do the big STEM pathways, and everything's building towards something over the course of 3 years. And you go watch those capstone projects, and it's like truly amazing where their mind went and the tools they used. And they really see software and tools just like a screwdriver or a hammer, where it's, I don't care what I have to use as long as it functions and it gets me to that point and I can answer why I'm doing this to somebody. That's fulfilling. If it's a matter of, hey, come into manufacturing because I want you to stand in front of this machine, it's like, I don't know. But if it's come into manufacturing and, hey, I'm going to teach you how to program this robot and we're going to virtualize the entire factory and it's sort of like a video game, that is something that gives someone excitement, right? Or like you mentioned, like, hey, I do these parts, and then we also, like TMCO and Lincoln, they do a bunch of stuff for the zoo. So the kids and the families and the parents, they can go to the zoo and take the kids there and they can be like, look, I made that. Like, my company makes all these parts, but we do all this stuff for our community. That's something I can be proud of. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Unfortunately, I think we're in this strange transition where there's a lot of upper management at companies that haven't spent the time to understand that the company can be better if they start sharing the why, versus just being like, well, I started on the shop floor, I worked my way up. Another 20 years, you could be here too. Just keep your head down and don't say anything and move on. So, and I would go ahead. I'm going to read through some comments here and see if there's any questions that come up.
Yeah, I think it's a work in progress. I think it's unfortunate, but if you get a really good marketer and, just really good employees that can advocate for your company, I think that can start to change some of those higher ups to, especially the old school higher ups who have been used to the sector being male dominated and this command and control type, management style. Because I feel like, it's that old cliche of happy wife, happy life thing. And you mentioned it before. If you have happy employees, they're going to be productive more. And who doesn't like to be more productive and make more money for themselves, right? That's the end goal. I think everybody has in mind to some extent, but you really need to make the process more enjoyable for everyone. And, you were talking about, hey, let's stand in front of this machine and just punch this hole, throughout the day. Yeah, that's really boring. And it made me think, today my mom is actually having knee replacement surgery. And it just made me think of, that part needed to be made so that she can walk around and not fall over or it fail. So it's stuff like that. Like, this is an actual metal piece that's going into someone's knee so that they can walk around. And, you're just punching holes maybe, but what is that hole for? What's the shape of the hole? How does it fit into a bigger component? Like, just show them the whole story. And it gets really frustrating, especially if you're a writer like myself. I'm a technical writer. When you talk to companies and they're like, yeah, we'll share this information with you, but you can't share it with anyone else because of these NDAs. And it's like, okay, Well, we can keep that NDA in contact and we can make who you are ambiguous and still write the story because it's still important to get out there. And it's so frustrating where they're like, nope, we don't want to do it. We're not participating in that case study. And I feel like that's just hurting more people than actually helping them. So I really wish some of those old school manufacturers would stop with the NDAs and or be, kind of flexible on them so that we can share these amazing stories, because that's really what's going to get people excited about manufacturing again and get them proud to be a part of the sector like we were back in the 40s when it was something that brought the whole country together during the war. So let's get back to that point where we can be proud of what we're making and, use that as a competitive advantage from the rest of the world, because we need it right now, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like I've spent, gosh, over 20 years now teaching CAD and CAM. And like you can go teach a CAD class and a whole bunch of engineers will come in and you can teach them all and it doesn't matter. You try to put four different companies that manufacture in a room to teach them CNC or teach them CAM. And they're like, yeah, no. You'll teach us and then you'll teach them and then you'll teach them, because we don't want to make the mistake of this person saying something to give away this secret to this other company. And it's like, it's so counterintuitive to being together to produce parts. It's like, oh, no, this one thing might be the secret. And it's like, if it is the secret, do you know how long it would take for somebody to reverse engineer that to make it how you do it anyway? Like, but there's that old school mentality of like, no, that's mine.
That's my secret sauce. No, yeah. It really isn't. Other people are using your secret sauce just in different ways.
Yeah. Well, everybody has different equipment. Everybody has different requirements. Everybody serves somebody different, right?
Right.
So there was a question that came up about mentorship. And what do you see in that realm of, how do mentors come into play in this, evolution of manufacturing?
I think mentorship is very essential to getting younger generations excited about it. There's a few people that I can call out that would be great mentors, but it really gets down to trying to figure out how can you develop a mentorship program within your company, which is not easy to do. And there's a lot of great panel discussions out there, a lot of good articles where people have talked about this and trying to figure out what's the best process. But I think it really depends on what your company culture is and what type of employees that you have within your company, and really, getting them excited to be a leader, because not everybody wants to lead. Not everybody wants to be paired up with someone. When you do have facility tours, I think it's important for students who are coming on to these tours to not just talk to the employees who are on the shop floor, but also talk to the employees who are working in the office, talk to the top executives. So I've been to plenty of facility tours where, the CEO is not involved or the sales director isn't involved. And I think that's kind of a mistake not to include them in the conversations as well, too, because, that should be your child, so to speak, when you're the leader of everyone else. You want to present your best, and you're part of that best, so you should be included in those conversations. So I think there's a mixture to have it be successful, because a lot of stories that I've heard, kids aren't interested in manufacturing sometimes because they don't believe that they have the skill set to be successful within the sector. So it just takes that one person to say, hey, you can do this. You're the perfect fit for this, to get them excited and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. It's something that I practice with my kids all the time, because especially with my daughter, sometimes she's like, oh, I can't do that. And I'm just like, yes, you can do whatever you want to do. And it's that extra push where she's like, yeah, maybe I can pull this off and maybe I can do this. So I think if we can get maybe 3 or 4 people within each company, depending on their size, to really focus on, okay, how can we tell our story, share it, bring in students for internships or apprenticeships, and who can we pair them up with so that it's this long-term relationship. And if they do get hired on as a full-time employee, what other ways can we still create that bond where that it's a strong connection and it's someone that they can go to anytime they have a question or they run into an issue. So you really have to vet out who your employees are and who is comfortable with taking on that role. Because again, not everybody's going to want to be a mentor. They're going to think that it's interrupting their day. So it's not as easy as it sounds. I've heard some really good ideas and really good thought processes about it. But again, I think people just need to do their research and try to figure out what's best for their company. Because I think there's different ways that you can do it. And I haven't seen a right or wrong way. I've heard different types of theories and strategies, and I feel like they would all be good, just depending on what the work environment is for it to be successful.
Yeah.
And I think too, we need to tie it in though sooner, before the kids are starting to think about their career pathway, maybe creating something where manufacturing day is coming up soon here. So maybe creating something where you have like an event at your facility and not just bringing high school students in, but bringing younger kids in too, and connecting them with someone like a big sister or big brother program with someone in that facility, and follow that process through, not just that one day, but follow it throughout the whole year where you're having these ongoing events and you're connecting to that same kid at each event. That's just a thought. I don't know. So different things.
No, I think that's great. And I think the other thing that's a part of that too is when you're talking to the younger kids, you also have to include their parents, right? Because you have to change the perception of what manufacturing is to their parents. Because a lot of them, like there may be a kid that's like, oh, hey, I like robots. That sounds pretty cool. And it's like, oh, we do robots in manufacturing. Oh, yeah. No, don't do robots for manufacturing. Go to Boston Scientific and do the walking dog, or, things like that. That's where you can do robots. Don't mess over here in manufacturing. And I think there's a little bit of that perception image from previous generations, which was rightfully so back then, but not today. But I think you have to include them too, for the parents to be like encouraging of like, hey, you could go out and make, $100 grand plus a year programming robots and manufacturing and change the world, not just being service industry. So I agree with that. And it's funny you talk about mentors, because it brought up sort of my path through manufacturing. And I'm going to give a little bit of a short / long-winded story. So when I was in high school, I was actually going to go do diesel mechanics. My grandfather owned an implement dealership. I grew up there. I worked on tractors and things like that. It was great. Like I loved it. So I was like, I'm going to go to tech school and I'm going to do that. Like I was done my junior year, all signed up. Everything was good to go. My senior year, I broke my neck, and the doc was like, well, I got good news and bad news. The good news is you can walk. The bad news is your path that you chose is out the window. So go pick something else. I went to the college that I was signed up for, SCC Milford, and I was sitting down in the lobby and I was just going through the book of things. So I'm like, well, this is out, this is out, this is out, this is out. And it came down to manufacturing engineering or architecture. And I was like, well, I really like the manufacturing thing. I know nothing about it. So on a whim, I just checked it out of a book. And I went through school. I was lost all the way through school because I didn't know why I was going to be there. I didn't know, anything about manufacturing. I didn't know why I was learning any of this stuff. And so I went out, got a really good job, bounced around a little bit. And it wasn't until I started doing Solidworks all the way back in 2000. I worked for a reseller. And I started understanding a little bit, because I got to go out and talk with companies. I got to teach people. I got to work with like the older generation that's now retired. And then I went to a small machine shop in Omaha, Benson Machine Works. And it was at Benson Machine Works that the owner really took me under his wing. And like, we would stay after hours. We would talk about programming. We would just play with ideas. And like, at that point, everything clicked for me, because I had two mentors in a row that were sort of like, hey, just be yourself. This is cool. Do what you're doing. You have some raw talent here. We understand you don't know why you're even here. But like, it was those two that was like, you know what? There's some really amazing things in manufacturing, and I really love this, and it fits my personality. But until that point, which was like 3 or 4 years, like I was just bouncing around lost. I just luckily had enough skills to cover my butt to stay employed to do those things. But so when you talk about mentorship, like I couldn't agree more. Like you have to find the right people to just let you be you and figure out your way. And that really is a unique skill that not everybody has.
Yeah, I think it's a gift really more than skill, just because you have to be patient, you have to be understanding, you have to be encouraging. There's a lot of things that you have to be wrapped up in one individual to really be a successful mentor, I think. And, sometimes the best mentors that I've had have all been accidental. They've all come from good friendships that I've developed with people. And there's one, her name, she's such a fantastic lady. Her name is Teresa Bichilo, and she owns a welding company called Superior Joining Technologies, and it's in Machesney Park, Illinois. And I don't know if she was doing this purposely or if it was just, hey, you're in manufacturing, you're trying to learn more about the lingo and stuff so that you can be a better writer. But she invited myself and a coworker, because she was part of this organization called Women of Today's Manufacturing that she started in Illinois to get more women excited about manufacturing in that area. And she invited myself and my coworker, to a TMA event. And I met a lot of fantastic women there. It was such a great event. And this is going to stick with me until the day I die, probably. But she was like, okay, it's not a matter of remembering everyone's name. It's a matter of having them remember you. So she's like, make sure you're giving them a strong handshake. You're looking them in the eye. You're happy. You're smiling. And she's like, and did you notice I wore a pink jacket today? And it was this bright, beautiful pink jacket that she had on. And she's like, guaranteed everybody's going to remember this jacket. And she was just such a fun person to be around, but it was really helpful information for myself and my coworker, because we were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And she's like, try to remember as many people as you can, but make it a point to have people remember you. And she's like, and you'll make a ton of connections and you'll just go super, super far. And she's just, it was one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten. And I don't even think she realized that at that point, I was looking at her as a mentor, like someone that I respected and would go to for advice. So sometimes they're accidental, sometimes they can be purposeful. But yes, I think it's a gift for a person, just to encourage and, believe in someone and have them do great things. So it's interesting with your story. You sounded like you were really happy in what you were doing until you met your mentors, and then that's where you found your passion. So that's such a great story.
Yeah, I was just sort of like, okay, this is a job, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, like everything clicked, and it's like, this is what I want to do going forward. Like, this is what I get out of bed for. This is what drives me to do what I'm going to do. And like, it was ridiculous because at the time when it happened, I was just sort of like, well, this is sort of fun. Like, this is cool. Like I get to try to cut wood on the laser and I get to do all this cool stuff. But it was like, all of those things just clicked all at once. And looking back on it now, it's like, that's where the corner turned. But if I hadn't bounced around and like got to that point, I may still be lost. You know what I'm saying? So it sort of comes back to career paths, right? Like the old school way. And people used to look down on me for this, is like, I would go to a place and I would work. And like, if I would hit what I felt was a ceiling and they're like, yeah, there is no more place for you, then I would go look somewhere else. I would go try to do something else, because my pursuit of education and knowledge outweighed the perception of, well, you have to be at this job for 15 years to be successful. And if you get a name for yourself in industry of bouncing around, no one will hire you. And what's really happened is the opposite. And I think I was ahead of what the younger generation does today, where it's like, if they're at a place for 3 or 4 years and they're not getting their needs met, they're going to go somewhere else. And I think that's the clash of culture, right? I don't know if you're seeing that or not, but to me, that seems to be pretty common these days.
I've definitely seen it, and I've definitely experienced it too, because I've been at several different places within 2 or 3 years of each other. And it did concern me, because it's like, okay, people are going to see that I haven't really been consistent in one location. But each of those opportunities provided me such a wealth of knowledge, and it really helped me figure out what I wanted to do for the rest of my life and what I was passionate about. And I think that's okay as long as you're learning from each experience and not just bouncing around to bounce around. But yeah, I think it's also a testament to how much value means to the younger generation. And I think it lights a fire under, owners' bums to like get real about their work culture and try to be better themselves too. So if you want the greatest talent to stick with your company, then make them want to stay there. Make some changes within your culture and make them be excited to be your employee, and then they won't leave. So I think it's a win-win for everyone because it helps everyone improve.
Yeah. I worked for a bit designing fire trucks, and it was pre-SolidWorks, doing AutoCAD 2D, AutoCAD solids. And like, I was working on the pumper division, designed everything up in AutoCAD solids and in the pumper. And like, they ran out of work for me. And I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? Like, do you want me to go help the aerial team? What do you want me to do? And they're like, yeah, so we have these parts that have never been put in CAD. We want you to go out to the shop and grab a tape measure and just draw them up. And I'm like, okay, well, that's really cool. Except for the fact of I would fall asleep at my keyboard because measuring a plate and putting holes in it for something that was built in 1940 and isn't even used, you're just wasting your dollars employing me to do that. And when I left, they're like, well, we don't understand why you would leave. Like, you're doing great. This is amazing. And it's like, well, yeah, it is amazing. And I build fire trucks and it has a good thing, right? We're helping people. But at the same time, like for me, I'm a necessary evil, right? Like, I'm really good at what I do, but you don't have anything to allow me to progress. So I went and found someone else to do. And I think that's where the mark gets missed on some of the companies, because they're like, well, yeah, we're still paying you. You should just be happy to be here, without identifying, like, some people would be happy drawing that plate. And you find the people that are happy doing that plate. They do 8 to 5. They just do their thing. They want to go home. And then you have the other group of people that you employ that are like the people that are going to push the boundaries, push you to the next level, take you to that next step. And I think that from a management structure, that's part of what needs to be identified in today's world, especially in manufacturing, because the technology moves faster than it did 20 plus years ago when I started in this world. So I don't know if you see any of that, but like, my experiences looking back, it seemed like I was just 5 or 10 years ahead of what the norm is today.
I've seen a lot of people enter a situation and immediately they were like, this is not what they marketed it to be. I'm going to get really bored here. I'm not going to like it here. And they left within like 3 months of getting hired. So it's been really interesting, because when I first started out in manufacturing, it was all about job security and like, okay, I need to stay here, get experience. But once you know like your skill set and what you can bring to the table and you have that confidence, it definitely changes, your story. And it's not necessarily about job security, but more like, okay, what's going to make me happier and where am I going to fit in more and provide the most value? And if you have the confidence to do that and the talent to do that, there's a lot of opportunities out there, especially within manufacturing with the skills gap coming up. I mean, everybody's hiring right now. You see for hire signs everywhere. It's not going to be hard to get a good job. So many manufacturers are struggling to fill those seats. There's a manufacturer here in my local community. They've been looking for a CNC machinist for the last 8 months. The same sign is still hanging up and they cannot find it. And I'm so tempted to go in there and say, okay, what do you do? What do you make? What are your components going into? I can help you promote this so that people get excited about it. Like, I'm so tempted to just walk in there and help them out, because it's been up for 8 months.
Yeah.
It's been driving me crazy.
Well, and that's funny too, right? Because a lot of these jobs are really good jobs, but the way that they're sold to the outside world isn't the most stellar. So people just drive right on by. And again, it's that bias of manufacturing is dirty and nasty and all that good stuff, right? So
And some of it still is. I mean, some of it still is, and some people like that aspect of it. But what else is it that can attract other people that don't like the dirty, dull, or dangerous part of it? And that's the question you need to start asking yourself, and how you can promote it in different ways so that you get people excited about it. There's so
yeah,
many things coming in, especially with coding. I remember in high school, I took a computer coding class and I was so bored with it because I didn't understand. And I'm kicking myself for it because now it's everywhere and people make really good money doing it. And it's like, if I knew, like, if I had a hint that this was where it was going to go, I would have definitely stuck with
yeah,
it and been like an amazing computer programmer. But it was because, I think we need good teachers too, because we're also facing that issue, which was brought up to me in one of my past interviews. We're not just losing workers, we're losing teachers too that teach
yep,
tech and teach all of these classes. So
yep,
yeah, just we got to figure out how to get people excited about it so that we can fill up those teacher positions as well too, and the
yep.
opportunities. Because yeah, if I would have just had a great teacher during that time, I think I would have been more excited about it, but I just didn't get it at that time. I was like, who cares about this? No one cares. And then I'm writing about all these computer programs and I'm like, I was totally wrong. Should have rethought that whole process.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. When I started the computers, it was Oregon Trail and logo to make the turtle move around the screen, right? And it was like, nobody explained what the logo was other than the fact that you just follow this book and you make the turtle move, right? Like there was no explanation of like, hey, someday there will be a lot of value in being able to make that turtle move
Right,
around the screen. Um,
right.
yeah. So there's a couple questions that came in. I'm going to put them together because I think they're very similar. So one of the comments
Okay.
was, we hire intern high school students from First Robotics, and then what about university students? So can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing as far as like intern programs and those types of things, how they're evolving from like First Robotics all the way up to university?
So high school internships, I haven't really heard much about, and that's some of the conversations that I've been having with women who are in manufacturing. So it wasn't this past week because I took a day off of Mavens for the holiday weekend, but I did talk to, I want to say it was Michelle Coughlin the weekend before, and she does a lot with a robotics academy, and they're actually trying to incorporate a K through 12 program. So it's connecting the manufacturing companies within the community right with the schools. So instead of making it like an extracurricular activity, they're taking these programs and they're putting it within the school schedule. So it's not something that you do in addition to your schooling. It's something that you are actually going to school for. So providing that connection right away, I think, is really, really vital, because no one's going to sign up for your internship if they don't know anything about you and they don't know what you're producing. So I've seen different things that have worked well. I worked with a company in Rockford where they were actually taking kids out at the technical school level and developing the curriculum with what they did in that company. So we did a lot of CNC machining programming, and they also did a lot of CAD design. So they looked at the courses that the technical school was providing and created like a program or an internship based off of that tract within the school. And then once those kids came over to do the internship, they were getting paid for it because they were actually making parts and programming the machines. And that really gave them a sense of job security. So once the program was over and they graduated the school, they actually had a job to come to after they were done with the internship. So making that connection, I've seen a lot. Recently, the company that I work for now, we just signed up with an organization called Ripen. And what they do is they create job descriptions. It's really a project. So job descriptions, and then they push it out to their network. and they provide internships that are virtual internships. So you're not just working with your schools and manufacturers within local communities, you're actually connecting with other students who might not be in your community and know what you're doing. And so far we haven't made any connections because we signed up late for it, and we only had like 1 or 2 months before their semester started. So we're preparing ourselves better for the next semester so that we can actually get a few hits. But one of the things that we're struggling with is we only have 2 people within our marketing team. And it is marketing focused, but I think there's a way to actually do something virtual for anybody that wants to do CNC machining. And this is me just spitting off ideas right now, but because of everything being automated and connected now, and with the pandemic, we really learned that we can do things remotely. I think there is a way to do virtual internships and have people connect with their local communities, their local manufacturers, using that virtual internship and applying what they're learning to some sort of opportunity within their local community. I talked to Allison Giddens. She works with WinTech. She actually owns WinTech, and it's a company in Georgia, and she created a virtual internship. And initially she just was trying to focus on the state of Georgia, but then connections that she had across the country were connecting with her and saying, hey, we know this student, can they do this? We know this student, can we do that? So I think there's different opportunities for in-person type internships and apprenticeships, as well as virtual type internships and apprenticeships. It just really depends on what your company does and how it ties in with the current curriculum that a school is offering, because some schools don't offer, everything that's needed in manufacturing or engineering. So it's really trying to find those dots to connect to and working around that. And I've heard a lot of different programs that have been successful, and it really is just trying to get students attracted to the sector, getting them excited about it and signing up for it, because if they don't know about it, they're not going to sign up for it. But every single story that I've heard, it's turned into them getting hired on and starting their career either with that company and staying with that company for a little bit, or moving on to someone else after they're done with that internship. Another woman I talked to, her name is Nicole Walters, and she's doing a lot of internships with different apps. This is a marketing internship that she was offering. She is hiring younger generations to come on and use apps like TikTok or Snapchat to film the machining process. And that's helping her build up her marketing strategy. So I've seen, internships and apprenticeships focused on what the processes are in those facilities, but I've also seen different types of internships and apprenticeships dealing with how to market those opportunities within that manufacturer. So it's a bunch of different strategies.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That was kind of a long-winded answer, and I'm sorry.
No, it makes sense because, there's Industry 4.0, some argue Industry 5.0 now, where companies are adopting platforms that they work on, right? And this platform is now available somewhere that anyone can access at any time. So it makes it easier and easier to get people anywhere to be able to participate, be able to get interactive with manufacturing and with the process. And as you were talking about that, one of the things that popped into my mind is each state also has some limitations, because I know like MetalQuest in Nebraska had to go lobby legislation to allow the STEM kids to come in and do an internship, because there was this silly law in Nebraska that at 14 years old, I can go drive a tractor, which is way more dangerous than standing in front of a machine, but I can't stand in front of a machine. So MetalQuest had to take the charge to change legislation for the state of Nebraska to get those kids in and get them interested. They also send some of their employees over to teach the high school classes. So they're getting real world teachers doing that kind of stuff. But I think the mix of being able to do online, the adoption of most companies to pick some type of technology platform that they work with that puts all their data in there, it makes it ripe for online mentorship, online interns, the ability for anyone to work anywhere and find the company that truly fits them, which is, to me, the most important thing. So
yeah, and that legislation you were talking about too, I know within Illinois there is some weird legislation too that you can't offer paid internships to anyone that's under the age of 17. I believe, don't quote me on that, I might have to recheck that, but there is some stipulation for paid internships, but you can still do an internship if it's not paid with kids that are younger, which is weird to me. I don't know, but I feel like there is a way to take something within manufacturing, starting it either, you know, 6th grade and younger or 6th grade and older, and then developing that into an internship so that when a student is ready to either sign up for something that's hands-on learning, they already have some type of idea of what they're going to be doing, what skills it involves, and if it's something that they really want to pursue. Because I know in high school we had AP courses that we could sign up for and get credit for college. I feel like we can do that with some sort of hands-on learning with manufacturing and engineering. And I think some people are doing a great job right now, but it's just making it a nationwide thing so that we can start, you know, getting the right skills in the right seats that we need when 2030 hits. Because I think that's the statistic right now that the National Manufacturing Association is putting out there, that there's going to be like 2.1 million jobs available by 2030. So how can we fill those spaces? And another conversation that I had where I thought it was a really good point was with Tony Gunn. And he was saying, you know, not every community is going to have the same need when it comes to the skills gap. So you really need to look in your community and figure out what those opportunities are, because it's not going to be the same. Because one community might focus on CNC machining, while another community might be more focused on additive manufacturing, where another community might be in the computer programming type, robotics type stuff. So you really need to know what the niche is within those regions or communities so that you can apply what you need to fill up those opportunities, because it's going to be different.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the other thing about getting kids early is most schools today are set up to, by the time I'm a freshman, like I have a path that I'm going to go down to that's going to get me to college to do these next 10 things, right? But the problem is when I'm a freshman in high school, do I really know what path I want to go to? Probably not. I'm just going to pick whatever my influence is from my counselor, from my parents, from my grandparents. And so if you're not the doctor, lawyer type, which I'm not, how do I find the path that suits me, that gives me a fulfilling life? And unfortunately right now, if we're not reaching to those kids to be like, hey, there is something in manufacturing, maybe it's for you, maybe it's not, we're missing out on that, because they go down this path of 4 years and they get to college level and they're like, I don't really know what I want to do with my life. There's nothing out there that's fulfilling to me. You know, I can be A, B, C, or D, but the university is only pushing me to this because that's for profit. So I think there is, unfortunately, manufacturers have to jump in and push that, which is sort of sad in a way, but at the same time, like, manufacturers as a whole need to get together to fill what is needed to get the attention of those young future employees. Because the worst thing you can do is push a kid to a 4-year school that isn't built to go to a 4-year school and accrue all that debt and then get out and not have a fulfilling life or a fulfilling job. Like, that's just, that we're doing a disservice to those people. That's how I feel.
And I think too, the mindset of manufacturers needs to change a little bit too, because a recent conversation that I had with, she works for I can't remember if it's a nonprofit or for profit, but it's called Career Street, and it's in Erie, Pennsylvania. And she was talking about how, you know, manufacturers will come to the organization and say, hey, okay, these are the opportunities that we're looking, you know, for talent, and, you know, we need apprenticeships or internships. And Career Street does a really good job, fulfilling those positions. But then when it comes time for them to go to the manufacturers and say, hey, we could really use help in this area or this area, some of the manufacturers aren't as proactive to helping out. And I think that can be really detrimental in terms of trying to fill out these positions, because you need to be proactive as well too. And one of the conversations I had with Allison Giddens is, manufacturers really need to do a better job marketing themselves to the communities that they're in, because if they're great marketing themselves to customers, because that's what they need to keep thriving, but you also need your community now to thrive as well. So include in your marketing strategy some sort of community connection or something. And that's one of the things that I focus on with all the manufacturers that I work with. Like, okay, yeah, we need to connect with your customers for sure. That's one of your priorities. But what are some of these community things that we can start getting involved with, whether it's, manufacturing day or going to like a kids museum and showing what your parts are. Like, how can we get directly connected to the community so that your community knows, hey, yeah, this is one of the companies that helps, build up our community and it makes it more economically stable. You really got to start marketing to that too, to get advocates and brand loyalists that way. So I just thought it was interesting that some manufacturers are hesitant to be proactive when it comes to organizations like that, because those organizations were built to make those connections for you. They're actually taking that off of your plate. So it should be a give and take relationship, and hopefully that continues to grow and they can figure that part out of it.
Yeah. It's interesting to be on the sort of the outside looking in on some of this, because of who I work for. And I know I keep mentioning Nebraska, that's where I'm from. So I get a lot of involvement with those folks. It's also where I started working with manufacturers, but I know like Nebraska has 2.3% unemployment rate or something like that. It varies a little bit, mostly ag, but they've actually developed a tech alliance between a handful of manufacturers to try to figure out how are we going to bring people in? How are we going to get people into a state that's ag? How are we going to promote that? And one of the things that they constantly talk about is how are we going to market manufacturing to people as a whole, not just company A versus company B versus company C. And it's interesting to hear them all trying to understand how to make this work, because like you said, if you ask them what their vision is for their company to the customer, they could all tell you instantly. But you ask them, how am I going to get someone to move from California to Nebraska to come do this really cool thing that is high tech? And it's like, I don't know, luck, maybe, so I think there needs to be more support in that realm. There needs to be more things. I mean, all the discussions you have, us having manufacturing live here, like these do a fair amount, but there still needs to be that other push on top of everything that we're trying to do, right? Like we can talk about this and talk about it, but the manufacturer ultimately has to take some skin in the game, if you will, to make it work, right?
Absolutely. One of the companies that I work for in Rockford, Illinois, they have such a cool story. Their founder, he is Polish German or German Polish. I don't know what order that goes in, but I believe he's 89 years old now, maybe. I might be off a couple of years. He still works for the company. He still does stuff for the brand that he started. And he actually came here from Austria during the war or after the war, but he has a biography out. And it was really cool to have conversations with him. One of the responsibilities that I had was taking some of his written notes and developing them into blogs that he created. And it was definitely a challenge because his initial language was German. And he came here with his wife and two of their sons on a boat and started out at a local manufacturer that's still around in Rockford, Illinois. And he felt that he could do a better job designing machines for what he was hearing from the customers of this company. So he started his own company. he still works there today, and he still does the old school drafting of some of the machines. And it's just really cool that they have a long history, and he is still connected to some of the German companies that they work with in Germany. And he is really, one of his core values is family, and maintaining those relationships, because if you don't work together, then you're not going to be as successful. And they incorporated that into their business core values. But I wanted to connect him with the Rockford community. So the chamber had an event of like the top 40 people you should know. And I actually nominated him. And I told the marketing director, I was like, is it okay if I do this? And he goes, yeah, let's just not mention it to him right now. Because he was one of those old school type gentlemen where he didn't want to, want his name out there. He's very humble. And I went downstairs to get something that I printed off, and he came up to me and he's like, did you do this? And his strong German accent. And I'm like, yes, it's good for the company to know that, the longevity of the company. And he actually enjoyed himself at the event, but it was a great way to let people know, hey, this guy started this company. It's pretty successful. He's still going, he's still working, he's still passionate about it. And it really got a lot of community support after that event. And, we started to see more engagement on our social media channels, on our website. And it means a lot to people within your community, and I feel like if you can share more stories like that and share the history of how your company got started, people are going to kind of flock to that and support it as much as they can, because they want you to continue being successful. Because if manufacturers are successful in the community is more likely going to be successful.
Yeah. And all the stats support that, right? The longer a company is around, the bigger impact it has on the community. Yeah,
absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. There's so many awesome stories. The one thing I love about my job is getting to meet all those folks like that. You get all those inside stories, and it makes you feel good. But the world needs to know more of those stories versus whatever the biggest shock jock thing is on social today that everyone's going to go look at, right? We need the good, wholesome stories in there.
Right.
It does look like we're at the end of our hour. I didn't think it went that fast, but apparently it has. Now there's a couple projects that you're working on. Do you want to talk about those quick before we let you go? Because I know you're really, really busy these days with all of the Mavens stuff.
Yeah, so I have upcoming interviews with some fantastic women, and I am also looking for more guests too. So I want to put that out there. If you're interested in sharing your story and you're doing some amazing things, please contact me on LinkedIn or on mavensofmanufacturing.com and set up some time with me. I would love to help provide a platform for you to share your story. But I'm also in the works of creating a manufacturing school tour in my community. And I want to apologize. My husband just got home, and you probably will hear my kids crying, so I apologize for that. But I am working on a manufacturing school tour within my local community. It is something that I'm hoping to replicate and help manufacturers across the United States pursue if they're interested in doing it. And I already have a couple high schools signed on. I have a technical school signed on, and I'm actually bringing in a keynote speaker that I can't announce yet because we still need to confirm dates, but please tune in for that, because I'm definitely excited to bring in that keynote speaker, because we're going to be talking about, how important it is to bring in younger generations, but also looking into places that might not have been tapped before for talent, including inner city and rural areas where, kids might not know about the opportunities within manufacturing, and definitely empowering younger generations of women to come on board, because I'm all about bringing more women into the sector, just because, I'm biased, of course. So let's bring in more women. But really excited because it's actually going smoothly now, and it's just confirming one of two dates that we have on the table, and bringing in, the keynote speaker. But the high schools are excited about it. The manufacturers within our local community are excited about it. And I'm going to be bringing the local news on there and creating a video and recording everything for all of you guys to see. So I'm really excited about it because it's been a lot of hard work and a lot of nervous times where I thought maybe I bit off more than I could chew and it wasn't going to work, but it's all coming into place and I'm really excited about it. So that's coming your way.
That sounds amazing. I cannot wait to see that and see how everything comes together. You now have my interest peaked on the keynote speaker, since you can't tell us who it is. But with that said, I would like everyone to go out to Mavens of Manufacturing, support Meaghan and what she's doing. It is crucial for all of us that manufacturing improves and succeeds, and that we get more people in manufacturing, especially more women in manufacturing. Because one thing to keep in mind is that without manufacturing, there isn't a need for CAD, there isn't a need for CAM. All of that stuff was built to support the manufacturing processes. So get out there, support Meaghan. If you know anyone that's a woman in manufacturing that would be great for her podcast, please reach out to her. I know there's an email on her website that you can reach out to get in contact with her. And Meaghan, I can't thank you enough. If you ever want to be back on, just reach out. I would love to have you back on to talk about this more.
Absolutely. And if you're going to FabTech, I will be there on Wednesday during FabTech week. So if you're there, please let me know. And I would love to meet you or stop by our booth if you have a booth there as well.
Thanks, Meaghan.
Thank you.